Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this press point with President Barroso and the Prime Minister of Greece, Prime Minister Samaras, who are here to speak to you about the working lunch, the meetings that the two have just had. I give the floor to the President.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Prime Minister Samaras and I have just concluded a very constructive meeting where we discussed the upcoming Greek presidency of the Council of Ministers, as well as developments in the Greek economy and financial assistance programme. I assured Prime Minister Samaras of the Commission support in the run-up to and during the Greek presidency, in what will be the fifth time that Greece takes this very important leadership position. The Greek presidency will play an important role in ensuring that key legislative files are taken forward in the Council in the first crucial 6 months of 2014. We will work closely with you and your ministers, Prime Minister, on seeing through the remaining proposals on a banking union, to deliver a successful European semester and to kickstart programmes under the next 7-year budget, in particular the Youth Employment Initiative, which we will front-load from next year. So I really believe it's critical, when we speak about growth and investment, to have in place all the programmes. That's why we are working with the Council and the Parliament, and it will be indeed during the Greek presidency that we'll have this possibility of having the investments in the ground. On the economy now, I want to say that I very much support Greece's efforts in implementing the financial assistance programme. Prime Minister Samaras has once again assured me of his clear commitment to see it through. The Commission continues to believe that this is essential to secure Greece's future growth and jobs, and it is already giving positive results. I really want to congratulate you, Prime Minister and dear friend, for your leadership and determination. I believe it's key for the success of the programme. I know that the Greek citizens are operating in extremely challenging and difficult circumstances, but I believe now we can say there is light at the end of the tunnel. In fact, we expect a gradual return to growth in 2014 after 6 years of recession. Government bond spreads have fallen markedly since their peak in June 2012. Economic sentiment has improved. The current account deficit has fallen over the last 3 years, and Greece's debt to GDP ratio is set to start declining next year and fall below 120% by 2021. All these are encouraging signals when you think the doubts that were expressed some time ago concerning Greece. But further work is needed to consolidate these gains. The economic situation is still fragile, and this is not the time to take our hands off the wheel, but to roll up our sleeves. Fiscal consolidation, of course, is necessary. Full implementation of the programme is essential on this point in order to support the return of confidence and for the sake of growth and job creation. Stepping up the pace of structural reform is also crucial. More work needs to be done to reform the tax system. This is not only about increasing revenues, but ensuring social fairness. I think it's critically important for the support of the citizens to see that the reforms are not only for competitiveness, as they should be, but also for social fairness. And when we discuss taxes, this is, of course, critically important. We believe that there is still a way to go to modernise the public sector and really put it at the service of citizens and companies. This kind of an economic transformation takes time, and we know that in the short term it can be painful, extremely difficult from a political point of view, and socially quite challenging. I want to assure the Greek people that the Commission continues to stand by you, and will do it also in the future. For example, we are developing support for unemployed young people or for start-up companies through the European Union budget. Prime Minister, dear friend, a year ago the doomsayers were predicting that Greece would have to leave the euro. Through your leadership and the determination of the Greek people, they have been proved wrong. Not only that, but we see now better signals for the future. And you will be taking on the responsibility of a Council presidency in the European Union. I look forward to working with you at this decisive time for Europe. I know also your personal commitment to our European values and our European project. In May, people will head to the polls to vote in the European Parliament elections, and it is very important that we make these elections a moment of European democracy. And I'm sure that from now until then, we'll make also progress in delivering concrete results. Some important decisions were taken by the European Council, by the institutions, by the governments, but we need to be sure that they are really implemented on the ground, including, namely, the most important ones to tackle the dramatic issue of unemployment, namely youth unemployment. That is why putting in place on the ground these programs and also doing everything we can to start or restart the financing to the economy, namely to SMEs, is so critical at this moment. Once again, thank you for your visit. I believe we had a very good discussion and will remain, of course, as always, in very close contact.
Well, I want to thank my good friend President Barroso for his leadership and for his cooperation with Greece in order to tackle the problem of the crisis. It has been already made clear that we've discussed basically two issues. One, the economic progress in Greece, and two, the preparation of my country for the presidency starting the 1st of January 2014. After 6 consecutive years of very deep, prolonged, difficult recession, severe unemployment, and a dramatic drop in living standards, Greece is now obviously reversing the trend. During the past 15 months, we've put all the attention we could and all our energy in implementing structural reforms and fiscal consolidation. And for the first time, our middle-of-the-year recession forecast is better than the initial one. And for the first time, for many, many years, we are getting closer to a primary surplus. According to the latest data by the Commission, the IMF and the OECD, Greece is currently producing the largest cyclically adjusted primary surplus and the largest structural surplus in the European Union. The structural reforms have been implemented by over 75%, and the competitiveness gap since the year 2000 has been fully covered. This has been achieved with patience, dignity, and persistence on the part of the Greek people in order to come out stronger from this crisis. And as the President has just indicated, it is true that over a year ago, many uncertainties about our immediate prospects in the Eurozone were heard all over the place, but today there is no more talk about the infamous Brexit, and our recovery is considered imminent from next year. Job creation and the return to long-term sustainable growth is obviously our top priority, and Greece's comeback will be signaled and will be underlined by the Greek presidency. The preparation for this presidency has started months ago, proceeds at full speed ahead. We are presenting a bold agenda of priorities, which includes obviously what the President just said, growth, jobs, cohesion, investments, as you said, on the ground, the completion of the new EMU architecture, migration, borders, mobility, and an all-encompassing European maritime policy. The Greek presidency is committed to work for more democracy, transparency, and accountability in the decision-making process. We are looking for an effective cooperation with the European Commission and the European Parliament, as I said earlier, in order to deal with all persisting problems of our Union. A successful presidency at the first year of our economic recovery will mark a double return for our country in a united and stronger Europe. 2014 is the year of the 8th Euro elections, to be held in an obviously critical conjuncture. Our presidency will work hard together with all our partners and the European institutions to reverse the current trends. The answer to all current challenges is more growth and more Europe, and above all, a clear determination to achieve our common goals. And I want to thank you very much, Mr. President, for this opportunity you've given me.
Thank you to the President and the Prime Minister. We start with it. We have time for 2 questions. We start with a question from the Greek television. Go ahead.
Can I use this one? Thank you.
You can.
My question has 2 parts. It is for the President for the Commission. I would like to ask you, Mr. President, as far as we wait for the next review of the Troika in Greece, has already started a debate concerning the fiscal gap of the period 2015-2016. I would like to ask you if Greece is obliged to take additional adjustment measures like cutting salaries and pensions and additional taxes. And the second part of my question concerns the financial gap. It is the gap for the year 2014 and 2015. I would like to ask you if Greece needs a new program for financing, for financial assistance. It means first in conditionality, it means a new memorandum of understanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. So, first of all, as you know, the new Troika mission is already now arriving in Athens at expert level. The heads of the different teams are going to arrive this weekend. So I have to wait for the report they made after having contacts, of course, with the Greek authorities. So from a technical point of view, to give us the full picture, I cannot at this stage speculate about what can be the next steps. What I can tell you now is that the current program is fully financed until mid-2014, and it is on track. The Greek authorities are showing strong commitment in implementing it, and we are starting to see the first results of that commitment. Of course, we all know that for Greece the economic challenges have been extreme, and it is no secret that we'll have to look again at Greece's financing needs and any possible gaps. I'm aware of all the speculation going on about this at the moment, but I will not add to that speculation. I don't think it is useful, nor do I want to preempt the results of the mission that is currently underway. Let's come back to this when experts have done their economic analysis. But the word I want to give now to the Greek citizens is a word of confidence, is that in fact their efforts are paying off, and that it is important to understand that it is not now that we should put in question the results achieved. A great part of the issues regarding Greece and other countries and program has to do with confidence, with expectations. We have spoken about this, Prime Minister and myself. We have seen, and we have seen in different countries, that when there are doubts about the determination of the country regarding implementation of the program, immediately there are consequences in terms of market confidence, investors' confidence. On the positive side, when there are signals of clear determination, and not only signals but also decisions, then this is rewarded. This is positively seen by the markets. I want to say this to you, why? Because I think it is very important for the Greek citizens to understand that when the Troika is going there, also sometimes with news that are not very pleasant to give, but it is there to support Greece. It is not a question of being nicer or not so nice. It is a question of designing with the Greek authorities and, of course, afterwards to have the support of the Eurogroup countries, a program that is credible, that at the end the markets trust, and so the investors are coming back. and they can create more growth in Greece and more exports in Greece and so on. And so the news are good from that point of view. It serves no purpose, and it will be in fact counterproductive if now the experts of the Troika going to Athens say, okay, now everything is okay, nothing is more necessary. No, because even if they said that, and if they did not solve the problem of confidence, then Greece will have to pay a higher price. So I want to make this point because I know it's very sensitive. I know also in other countries that I'm following very closely, this is a critical issue. But I really want to urge all those who have a responsibility and are thinking about the good for Greece to understand the need to complete the implementation of the program in a successful, credible way. Let me just one more reason for hope. We're also discussing this now. Some time ago, Greece was one of the less good performers in terms of structural funds. One of the last in the list in terms of mobilization of the structural funds. Now it's the fourth. That was achieved, of course also with our support, but thanks to the great reforms and commitments of the Prime Minister and the Greek administration. So people that are now in fact receiving less in terms of, because of the cuts in the salaries, are now showing great professionalism and competence. Greece, I repeat, is the fourth country between all the 28 in terms of good performance regarding the utilization of the structural funds. From the 1st of January 2014, there will be plenty of additional money for Greece. Greece negotiated a very good package in the next budget, European budget. So let's now try to make the most of it, keep the good work, but make the most of these funds for investment, addressing, for instance, some of the gaps in financing of the real economy, the SMEs, that are, some of them, struggling with very difficult access to capital. And one of the key variables for growth is confidence. I'm giving you this very long answer because sometimes I believe it's, of course, not putting the blame on anybody, but some of these discussions, public discussions, about financial gaps and so on, can only distract us from what is needed to be done, and can only increase the uncertainty at the moment when what we need is certainty. And I think now we have already a sufficient track record to say this will succeed. Of course, if needed, the program has to be adapted. Of course it will be. But to make speculations now about the worst case scenarios, I don't think it's good. And what I'm saying, I think it's very, very strong, because I remember when also in this building I was receiving many experts around the world, and they were telling me that by the end of 2012 Greece would be already out of the euro. So they were wrong. Those speculations were counterproductive. And in fact, Greece has paid a price for that. The Greek people have paid a price for that. Because all those analysts that were predicting the worst, in fact, they were increasing the interest rates that Greece and the Greek people had to pay. That's why I think it is very important that we manage expectations correctly. And this is to be realistic, to say, yes, this has been done, this was good, this has still to be done, let's address the issue. And I think that's only with this realistic assessment that we can make progress and help Greek and the Greek citizens to get out of this situation, because I believe they will succeed.
Well, I want to agree very much with the President. I want to make sure I say that Greece is back on track. Actually, in some respects, it is even better than targeted, both in terms of structural surplus as well as in terms of the less than predicted recession that we are going through. Numbers, in other words, have been revised upwards. This means what? It means that the sacrifices of the Greek people are producing tangible results. And I also want to mention that according to last year's November 27th Eurogroup decision, if Greece indeed achieves its targets regarding the primary surplus, and obviously the structural reforms we're going through, then all temporary funding problems, because you've asked about this also, will be taken care of. And so we are achieving our targets. So I have to agree that all this talk about the need for extra financing of Greece has to be along the lines of last year's agreement. Not because Greece has failed, but because Greece has been successful this time around. And therefore, it requires the helping of our allies. And more specifically, I want to tell you that concerning the fiscal gap for the years 2015 and 16, we have already agreed to take steps and cover any prospective fiscal gap of the order that has already been mentioned by us and the Troika in the past of 2.5 billion. The agreement holds. We will see with new discussions the exact numbers. And again, what we have to do is not any additional austerity measures, but structural reforms with positive fiscal impact. And therefore, that's what we intend to do on our side, which is stick with our targets. And this is what we have been doing. And I repeat again, sometimes we go even better than targeted.
Thank you. The last question, Martina Seves, Wall Street Journal.
Hello, thanks. Martina Seves from the Wall Street Journal. A question in response to what Prime Minister Samaras said. For both of you, I suppose. Prime Minister, you've spoken about no additional austerity, but really sticking to the structural reform targets. And you've spoken about how Greece has, in some respects, overperformed and surprised positively in terms of the fiscal front. Is it your feeling that there's no social, financial, and indeed political space for additional cuts on top of what's already been predicted and agreed on for the current year in 2014? As you go into the budget process in October, did you discuss this with President Barroso? I mean, additional fiscal measures for this period and the new year over and above what's already been agreed. And President, Mr. Samaras has been stressing a new focus and a further focus on structural reforms. Do you see any willingness on the Commission and the further Eurozone partners to go a little easier on Greece, given its good performance on the fiscal front, and focus instead on structural reforms? Would you therefore be prepared to cut Greece some slack on fiscal measures and make sure that there's more attention paid to pushing through structural reforms?
I do not want to add anything more to what I said before in answer to your question. I think I've answered it already. What we're basically doing is fiscal consolidation, structural reforms that are necessary. We're going through, we're on target. We expect, obviously, our allies to perform accordingly in terms of what has been already announced from the Eurogroup decision in last November. So this is where we are. I'm not trying to play it over-optimistic. I'm just calling it as it is. And I'm just saying facts as they are. And I believe that these are a good, solid basis for Greece to try and perform even better in the future. And this will be, I repeat, a very positive signal for us when we will be taking over the European presidency, and it will be a double score for Greece.
I'm already on record saying that a policy only of fiscal consolidation has its limits, political and social limits. That's why it is important to understand that the policy we are implementing in Greece and other program countries is not just focused on fiscal consolidation. It's also about structural reform and also about investment, namely investment to support the poorest in the society, and including the biggest issue, that is, I think, the issue of unemployment, namely unemployment of young people. So it's a caricature to present the European Union policies agreed by the European institutions and the Member States because it's not just of the institutions, it was agreed unanimously by the member states, to present it as centered in fiscal consolidation only, or alone. It's also about structural reform and about investment. And that's why, for instance, I mentioned before the importance of structural funds if they are properly managed and implemented. Now, even fiscal consolidation, what we have been proposing and will keep proposing is what we have called growth-friendly fiscal consolidation. So we are, for instance, advocating, even for Greece, stronger social safety nets. For instance, support for those that don't have health insurance. So we believe that, yes, a country like Greece and other program countries had to front-load the fiscal adjustment. Let's not forget where we were 2 or 3 years ago. If there was not the front-loading of the fiscal adjustment, simply these countries will be completely out of the market, and there will be no credibility also to ask for the other countries to make the loans to those countries. So we were very close to insolvency in those countries. That's the reality. We have to face it. So the front load of the fiscal adjustment was not an option. It was the only way forward. Of course, we have not advocated for all countries in the European Union. We have said at that time that, for instance, countries with surplus could do more to rebalance their internal demand. This is important because sometimes people say also that this is a one-size-fits-all approach. It's not true. So we have argued for front-loading the fiscal adjustment, but as much as possible try to protect some expenditure, not only the expenditure that can generate growth in the future, but also some targeted expenditure. Now, when it comes to the fiscal consolidation, for instance, reducing public services that is too big, that is sometimes called austerity. I call it efficiency and I call it a social measure. Because you cannot have the people of countries that are in such a dramatic situation be paying with their taxes for this kind of public service. So to reduce the public service, the dimension of the state administration, to make it leaner, to make it lighter, while keeping as much as possible the quality of public services, this is a good social policy. The same kind tax reform. When we speak about tax, it's not just to collect more taxes. It's to have more people paying taxes, reduce tax evasion and tax fraud, to enlarge the basis of contribution, because that is a critical area for fairness. Of course, Greek people are angry, and they are rightly angry, when they discover that many people, including some of the wealthiest, were not paying taxes at all. That's the reality. They will be ready to make sacrifices if they see that they are more fairly distributed. So this is also important. So we are not advocating fiscal consolidation for the sake of fiscal consolidation, but what I call smart fiscal consolidation. Another example is labor market reforms. Of course, it may seem difficult, but they are critically important to have more people, young people in the market. Because if the labor market is not reformed, what happens is that the companies, namely small and medium-sized companies, will not hire young people. So we are artificially protecting jobs that sometimes are not competitive or sustainable, and you are condemning a new generation to have to be in unemployment. Once again, it is citizen-friendly and workers-friendly and social-friendly, a policy that promotes market labor reform. Finally, as I've already mentioned, through the Task Force for Greece and other instruments, we are doing the best to increase the support of the European budget, to support the Greek authorities to provide target training programs, namely for young people. So I believe this is a good signal, a good demonstration that we are not exclusively focusing on fiscal consolidation, that even fiscal consolidation, there is some margin to see what are the areas where we can and should cut, and others where we could not cut, or could even put some more money, namely to protect the most vulnerable. And also that, yes, I agree with the point you've made in your question, that the critical issue now is structural reform. By and large, we can say that Greece has been very, very courageous in the fiscal consolidation efforts. If you compare with other countries, it has made a huge effort. Some would think it will not be possible. It was done. But in terms of structural reforms, let's be also honest, they started sometimes late. There were some political problems that created some doubts. And for instance, the privatization program also took some time to be implemented. I discussed this very frankly and openly, as always, with my good friend, Prime Minister Samaras. And I think we have agreed that more emphasis has to be put in the structural reforms and also on speeding the privatization program. That is one of the ways also to address any possible financial gap, if there is. Because if you have more receipts, more revenues from these sources, you can address without imposing on your citizens additional sacrifices. But these are matters that have to be dealt with at technical level, and I know that we have a very competent, let's say, staff there, together with the European Central Bank and also with the IMF, and of course with the Greek authorities that are putting the best of their people in that area, so that we can, after comprehensive assessment now in these reviews, see what is the best way forward. And I cannot now anticipate what is going to be exactly the next steps.
Thank you very much, President. Thank you, Prime Minister. This concludes our press point. Thank you very much for coming.